And my name is Russell Fisk, Associate General Counsel for the New Mexico Public Regulation Commission. We're here for the hearing on the ETC petition of ComNet Wireless on behalf of NTUA Wireless for participation in the state, the SRUSF, the State Rural Universal Service Fund broadband program. This is case number 20-000. I'm sorry, 20-00152 UT. And like I said, it's in the matter of the petition of ComNet Wireless on behalf of NTUA Wireless, which is an approximation of what's in the caption. So as I said, I'm the Associate General Counsel for the Public Regulation Commission, and I am the hearing examiner designated for this matter. So I guess with that, we should all introduce ourselves. Let's start with, we'll start with counsel for ComNet and NTUA, and then Mr. Maharaja, and then we'll go with Joan and everyone affiliated with staff, and then we'll do Bill.
Yes,
Us before Bill. Okay, thank you.
yes, this is Jeff Albright. I'm New Mexico Counsel on behalf of ComNet Wireless LLC and NTUA Wireless and the affiliated companies. And with me today, I have Rohan Ranaraja, who is our witness in the proceeding. And Rohan, if you want to just say hello there while we go through the other appearances, and then you'll be sworn in by David Lee.
Good morning, everyone. Happy to be here. Rohan Ranaraja. I'm the Executive Director of Regulatory Affairs for ATN International, which is the ultimate parent of ComNet and NTUA Wireless.
Okay, my name is Joan Ellis. I am the staff counsel in this proceeding, and I have with me Mr. David. Yes, sorry, I'm sort of nuts here. Tim Kelly, and he is our witness, and we'll get into it a little further on. This is his first hearing.
William Templeman on behalf of the New Mexico Exchange Carrier Group.
Hey, Bill. Again, we can hear you, but as usual, you're a bit muffled. So if you want to speak up, I could hear you though. So.
All right, I apologize. I'll step forward.
Okay, and then I guess we have some other people from staff who will not be witnesses. Just for the record, if you'd like to introduce yourselves, Eugene, Mike, and then we also have another attorney from legal division. Just like to introduce yourselves for the record, that'd be great.
Michael Ripperger, Telecommunications Bureau Chief, Utility Division, Public Regulation Commission.
I'm Eugene Evans. I'm telecommunication engineer, and for staff, I'm just sitting in, observing.
John Bagatko, attorney for staff, riding shotgun with Joan Ellis today. Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. All right, thanks everybody. Now we had one pre-hearing we had a few pre-hearing conferences, but I realize now in this case we didn't have a conference right before the hearing to discuss things like the order of witnesses and such. I'm guessing that it will be similar to that the parties have already agreed that it'll be similar to the other some of the other matters in which there'll be first the examination of Mr. Ranaraja, and then that will be first direct by the attorney for ComNet NTUA, and then Joan, and then if I have any questions, and then any redirect. Is that what the parties had in mind? I think.
Yeah,
This is Jeff. I would presume that we would have Bill Templeman precede Joan in the event that he has cross-examination for Mr. Ranaraja.
Oh, I'm sorry. I left Bill out of that entirely. Sorry about that.
Yep.
Okay.
And then we'll go to Mr. Kelly, and similarly. And I don't think I don't believe we discussed much about the hearing itself. So we didn't discuss anything about opening arguments or anything that are closing arguments. Did anyone want to make arguments? Counsel?
This is Mr. Albright. With regard to argument, we'll waive any opening arguments. I do have one preliminary matter, though, and that's with regard to the introduction of exhibits. We had submitted documents for the hearing, not knowing whether or not people would have them at hand or not. So in addition to the testimony that we'll be introducing through my witness, through Mr. Ranaraja, we also included Exhibit 1, which was the verified petition in this case. It was originally, of course, submitted in case 2000099-UT for the broadband projects. And we also have Exhibit 2, which was our partial annual ETC for ComNet Wireless LLC. Don't plan on, it was a verified petition by Mr. Ranaraja. And so I can introduce those through him or into the record, but they were just to be provided as background and information and not, I think they're referenced in his testimony throughout and by other folks as well with regard to the petition. So we could either do that rather than just taking administrative notice. I made them available in case people had specific questions. But I'm not sure the best way to introduce those. We can go ahead and label those as we did when we submitted them to Isaac as C-NTUAW1 and Exhibit 1 and Exhibit 2, and then save the testimony itself for Mr. Ranaraja.
Staff would object to introduction of those as evidence because in fact, this is about this ETC designation case. And to the extent that Mr. I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, Ranaraja, is that correct? That he wishes to incorporate those two other petitions that really, he does refer to them, but they should not be the basis of a record as an exhibit.
Well, are we saying, so let me look at the exhibits here. I received them by email. Are we talking about petitions not in this case?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Let me see here. Okay. So exhibit, which numbers are we looking at here? They are numbered on the email.
It would be Exhibit 1 and Exhibit 2. Exhibit 1 would be the verified petition that was filed on 7/24/2020. And then Exhibit 2 was just our partial annual ETC report that was in case 2000092-UT. Which is a compliance filing.
John, the first one, Exhibit 1, is the amended petition in this case.
Correct.
No.
Well, it was filed in 99, but it's
Broadband
relevant to this case because 152 was an outgrowth of that petition.
Right. No, it's the broadband application. 99 is the broadband application and not part of this case.
But I'm looking at Exhibit 1, and it is the amended petition for this case. 2152. That's what I'm looking at. That's Exhibit 1, isn't it? Am I looking at it? Let me see. Yes.
Yeah, I think they may be confused in what I'm understanding is that Mr. Albright wants to attach also the petition in the broadband case in 99 and the ETC designation case. Is that right? At the ComNet case, and maybe they are mislabeled or as 1 and 2.
Okay, so I see. Yeah, number 1 is the amended petition in this case. Number 2 is the partial annual ETC report for ComNet in. Well, that's in the regular filings case. The recertification. No. This is just the FCC filings case 2092. Is this the recertification docket? Is 2192 our recertification docket? I don't see this as recertification. I guess
Yes.
that was just for the filing of reports, but not recertification, I guess. And then let's see here. What's the other one? So number
But to
3.
make it easy, I don't think anything except documents relevant to this docket number, this case number, should be entered as exhibits. And maybe we just have a problem with what was sent out last night versus what is currently in the record. And we would object, staff would object to introducing as evidence and as an exhibit the two petitions of the two dockets that are not part of the instant case.
I'm just trying to find where there are such. And you said there was something that was sent out last night, because I'm looking at what was sent. No, that says this is last night. Yeah, I'm looking at what was sent last night. I'm going through. There were 6 exhibits. Okay, here. There's a set of discovery responses. I just don't see. Let's see, what's the last one?
Russell, I did
Let me
not see any exhibits that were from 2099. There
I
were
don't either. I don't
5
see
of
that,
them
John.
were from 2152, and one of them was from 2092.
Yeah, everything. What I see, Joan, is just what Isaac said, and Jeff and Joan. All of these exhibits are from this case. They're either the petition, discovery responses, or testimony.
Okay.
Except for number 2, which is not from 2099. The broadband application docket is from 2092, which was for the filing of FCC reports. So those are actually.
I guess I misunderstood Jeff this morning. He just asked if he could introduce as exhibits the decision in 2099 and 2152, and I think not 2152, the ETC certification case. So I'm just reacting to what he has said this morning.
Right. Well, so Joan, what I'm looking at is.
Hearing exhibit, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I was just going to say, I have no objections if exhibit number 2 from the compliance filing is not admitted in this proceeding. We thought it would provide additional context, but it's not critical to this proceeding. The verified petition, though, is relevant to this proceeding. It's a verified petition. It's not sworn to, so I was simply trying to get it admitted without having to go through the question and answers for Mr. Ranaraja, even though he did verify that it's not in the QA format as far as sworn testimony goes.
Okay, and we would object to that. You're talking about 200099, is that correct?
You're not correct, Joan. None of these exhibits
I
are.
know what I'm saying. Let Jeff answer, because he's got one thing, he's saying one thing, and he submitted something else.
Mr. Hearing Examiner, this is Bill Templeman.
Yeah.
If I could chirp in here, it seems to me that NTUA should proceed with its case and call its witness and identify the exhibits it wishes to introduce into evidence. And there can be objections or non-objections stated by the parties at that time.
Bill, I think that's a good idea. Let's go ahead and start and have Mr. Ranaraja sworn in, and we can deal with these exhibits as they come in. I think it was important that we actually identified that they would not, the exhibits were not as Ms.
Submit. Yeah.
Mr. Hearing Examiner, if I may, and Isaac, it looks like Mike Ripberger got kicked out. He's trying to get back on. If you could facilitate his reentry, I'd appreciate it.
I see he's no longer connected. I don't see him trying to re-enter yet, but I will keep an eye out. And as soon as he does, I will admit him.
Thank you.
He may have spotty Wi-Fi.
Mike does? Well, we can wait a minute and see,
Yeah.
but then we'll go ahead. I hear a bird.
That's my parakeet. They're happy.
Okay, well, we're gonna go ahead with Mr. Ranaraja.
Okay.
Since Mike is not a witness in this case, I mean, if he were a witness, I would, be willing to wait longer so we could hear the other witnesses. But I think we need to go ahead with Mr. Ranaraja. So if Mr. Ranaraja could be sworn in.
Mr. Ranaraja, would you raise your right hand, please? You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in the matter now pending should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Thank you.
And we'll begin with a direct testimony, a direct examination by Mr. Albright.
Good morning, Mr. Ranaraja.
Good morning.
Some preliminary matters. Would you please state your name, your position with ComNet Wireless, ATN, your current position with the companies?
Yes, my name is Rohan, R-O-H-A-N, Ranaraja, R-A-N-A-R-A-J-A. And I am employed by ATN International Inc. as its Executive Director of Regulatory.
And your relationship between ATN and ComNet Wireless and the other affiliates?
So ComNet Wireless LLC is a wholly owned subsidiary of ATN International, and ComNet Wireless LLC owns 49% of NTUA Wireless and is the managing partner of NTUA Wireless.
Okay, and how long have you been in your position?
I've been in my current position for about 10 years now, but I've been doing this stuff for about 20 years now.
Okay. And have you previously been involved in proceedings at the New Mexico PRC?
I have.
Okay. I've placed before you, or you should have at least before you, what has been marked as ComNet Wireless NTUAW Exhibit 1, the amended petition in this proceeding as labeled in case 20-00152-UT. Do you have that in front of you?
I do.
Okay, and that's a verified petition, and is it correct that you provided that verified statement to the petition?
Yes.
May I have a point of clarification, please? There was an original petition and an amended petition of some items in the original petition. Is it my correct understanding that the original petition should not be included as evidence in this case and just the amended petition?
Joan, when you say should, is that directed to me, or is this question directed to
Yes.
Jeff?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to answer that question. This is a matter of whether what Mr. Albright and his client want to bring in.
Well, I would like, if nothing, Mr. Ranaraja should indicate whether or not the omission of the original petition means that the amended petition that was attached to the direct testimony is the substitute for the original petition, and nothing in the original petition should be considered as evidence.
Well, Joan, I would say this is something you could ask on cross, or if when Mr. Albright moves to have this admitted, and that might be the basis for your objection, we can wait until Mr. Albright moves to have this admitted.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry, but it just sort of threw me for a loop this morning when all of a sudden the documents that I had versus and how they were labeled are very different in this case than what was just stated this morning and was submitted. So I'm just trying to clarify. Sorry. I'm not sorry. Excuse me. I'm just saying I'm trying to clarify.
Okay, Jeff, please continue.
Yes, Mr. Ranaraja. So the amended verified petition as an eligible telecommunication What was the purpose of that document?
The purpose of that document was to request state ETC status for establishing eligibility to apply for state broadband funding.
And was that document prepared under your supervision, direction, and control with the assistance of your local counsel?
It was.
Other than the testimony, which we will be introducing, and your supplemental and rebuttal testimony, do you have any corrections with respect to that document?
I don't.
Does that Exhibit 1 accurately summarize your petition with amendments for broadband support under the Commission's SRUSF broadband program?
Yes.
At this point, I move for the admission of C-NTUAW Exhibit 1, the amended verified petition of ComNet Wireless LLC for the limited purpose and request for expedited consideration into the record.
Are there any objections?
No objections, subject to further cross, though.
No objection.
It is admitted.
Okay, Mr. Hearing Examiner, for the sake of brevity, I'm going not to admit Exhibit 2 into the record. That is the partial annual ETC report for ComNet Wireless. For record purposes and for continuity, I'll just mention that it is labeled as Exhibit 2, and we will not be submitting that into the record.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Ranaraja, at this time, I'd like you to introduce or present to you the Exhibit 3, the direct testimony of Rohan Ranaraja on behalf of ComNet Wireless, on behalf of NTUA Wireless LLC, as C-NTUAW Exhibit 3. Do you have that exhibit in front of you?
I do.
And will you please identify the document? Is
Sure.
that your direct, let me assist, is that your direct testimony on behalf of
Yes.
ComNet Wireless, NTUA Wireless?
It is.
And that's filed in this case, correct?
Correct.
Was that document prepared under your supervision, direction, and control?
It was.
And do you have any corrections to make with respect to your direct testimony?
I don't.
If I were to ask you the same questions today as were asked at the time you prepared your direct testimony, would your answers be the same?
Yes.
At this time, I move for the admission of C-NTUAW Exhibit 3 into the record.
Are there any objections?
No
No.
objection.
No objection.
Okay, it is admitted.
Mr. Ranaraja, at this time, I also have before you what's been marked as C-NTUAW Exhibit 4. Do you have that in front of you?
I do.
And would you please identify that document?
Yes, it's the supplemental testimony of Rohan Ranaraja.
And that's on behalf of ComNet Wireless and NTUA Wireless LLC, correct?
Correct.
And was that document prepared under your supervision, direction, and control?
Yes,
Do you have any corrections to that document?
I do not.
If I were to ask you the same questions today that are reflected in the question and answers that were submitted at the time the supplemental testimony was submitted into the record. Would you have any changes? Would they be the same?
It will be the same.
Subject to your rebuttal testimony, correct?
Well,
At this time, I move for the admission of C-NTUAW Wireless LLC Exhibit 4 into the record.
Are there any objections?
No objection.
No objection.
It is admitted.
Mr. Ranaraja also have before you what's been marked as C-NTUAW Exhibit 5. Do you have that document before you?
I do.
And would you please identify that?
Yes, it's the ComNet Wireless LLC and NTUA Wireless responses to staff's first set of interrogatories, request for production of documents.
Okay, and was that document prepared under your supervision, direction, and control with assistance from local counsel?
Yes,
Do you have any corrections to make to that rebuttal testimony?
I do not.
If I were to ask you the same questions today as were asked at the time that you prepared this, would your answers be the same?
Yes.
At this time, I move for the admission of C-NTUAW Exhibit 5 into the record.
Are there any objections?
No objection, so long as that is identified as the rebuttal testimony.
Bill?
I have no objection. I understood that it was identified as a rebuttal testimony. Is there some question about that?
No, I
thought
just
it
wanted,
was
I
the
just
separate
wanted to clarify that since we're having problems.
Actually, I'm glad you're doing this clarification because I thought we were talking about responses to staff interrogatories.
Oh, wait a second. Then I do have an objection to
Okay, I'm
that.
sorry. No. Exhibit 5 is the rebuttal testimony. Exhibit
Yeah.
6
5 should be the rebuttal testimony.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought I heard something about a response to interrogatories. Did I hear something about that from Mr. Ranaraja? I could swear I heard that. Well, anyhow, okay, this is the rebuttal testimony. You're correct.
Yeah, so that's why I clarified it.
Okay, so
Okay,
yeah, let me,
Not the answers to the interrogatories, but the rebuttal testimony in response to the interrogatory.
yeah, I thought I'd heard something in testimony about that,
Yes.
that it being responsive to interrogatories too. So as long as we're clear, it's a rebuttal testimony. No one, there are no objections to that. That's what you mean to move into evidence as Exhibit 5, correct, Jeff?
Yeah, let me provide clarity there. It's rebuttal testimony on behalf of ComNet Wireless and NTUAW in response to staff's testimony.
Okay, and there were no objections, so it is admitted.
Okay, and for all parties, we also had ComNet Wireless's responses to staff's first set of discovery. We don't plan on introducing any of those at this point, but in the event that we, during cross-examination or other cross-examination by any of the other parties, may want to introduce elements of those. And again, we provided those for the convenience of the participating parties and the commission in this proceeding, given the fact that it's a little bit abnormal and we weren't certain that everyone would have them before them as part of this proceeding.
And I would object to that because actually responses to interrogatories would be the company's attempt to validate what they put in their testimony, but with the addition and assistance of their counsel, and the actual interrogatories and responses to interrogatories are not filed, they're not part of the record, and to include them last minute at the discretion of the applicant as to, to bolster their case by their answers to interrogatories that weren't previously part of the record. I object to that.
Well, I guess I don't understand what you're objecting to, Joan, because my understanding is Jeff is not moving at this time to have it admitted. Is that correct, Jeff?
That's correct. I'd also like to point out in response to Ms. Ellis that they included interrogatories in response to the interrogatories as attachments to the testimony of Mr. Kelly.
Yes, so they
So
would.
let's not bother to argue about this now, because there is no motion to admit at this point. If there
Okay.
is, then we'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
I'm just saying, I'm sending the signal to Mr. Albright that any attempt to get any other answers to interrogatories included at any time in the cross-examination to justify or supplement either Mr. Ranaraja's direct testimony or his oral testimony, I would object to.
Okay, well, I'm just gonna say this. Objections should be made at the time that they're relevant, not as a warning that you will be objecting at some point. We just need to move ahead with the examination. Jeff, go ahead.
And with that, Mr. Hearing Examiner, we present Mr. Rohan Ranaraja for cross-examination.
All right. So, did I have it wrong when I said it should go Joan and then Bill, correct? And then
No, it's the other way
Bill
around.
and then Joan. I'm sorry. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm a little rusty. Sorry. So, Bill, your witness.
Okay, thank you. Morning, Mr. Ranaraja.
Morning, Mr. Templeton.
Just to clarify for myself and perhaps for the record, notwithstanding the title of this case and the way testimony and exhibits have been labeled, the applicant in this case is NTUA Wireless. Is that correct?
Correct, NTUA Wireless LLC, yes.
And so we're not talking about a request for ETC designation for ComNet Wireless
No,
or ATN International
no,
or anybody else. We're just talking NTUA Wireless. Okay.
correct.
Is NTUA Wireless's entire service territory within the boundaries of the Navajo Reservation?
Yes, it is.
And I think I saw somewhere in your testimony that NTUA serves approximately 20,000 customers. Am I remembering that right?
That's correct.
How many of those 20,000 are within the New Mexico portion of the Navajo Reservation?
I don't have that information with me, but I'll be happy to provide that.
So just so that I'm clear though, the area that NTUA Wireless is seeking ETC designation for in this case is the New Mexico portion of the Navajo Reservation. Is that correct?
That's correct. I had previously said Navajo Nation, but I should have clarified that it was parts of the Navajo Nation that's within the state of New Mexico, which I did in my supplemental testimony, I believe.
But as we sit here today, can you fathom a guess for how many of those 20,000 are within New Mexico?
Subject to check. A guess would be about 6,000.
Okay. And can you tell me approximately how many of that 6,000, and I'm just not holding you to that number as precise, but of the customers in New Mexico receive Lifeline benefits?
I would say 70% of that, roughly.
70?
Yep.
Okay. And of those that receive Lifeline benefits in New Mexico, how many are for voice and how many are for broadband?
I'm sorry, Mr. Templeman, could you just repeat that? Just had a little bit of trouble hearing the question.
Okay, yeah. And of those New Mexico customers that receive Lifeline benefits, how many receive those benefits for voice service? And how many receive those benefits for broadband service?
I would say most of them receive both voice and broadband.
For both? Is that what you're saying, or one or the other?
They receive both voice and broadband.
Okay.
Sorry, Mr. Templeman, this is the reporter. You're saying Lifeline?
Yes.
Thank
Yeah,
you very much.
Yeah, you're going to hear that a little bit more, so I'm glad you clarified that. And when you answer my question here, Mr. Ranaraj, are you talking about federal Lifeline program?
Correct.
What about the tribal Lifeline program? How many of those Lifeline customers are receiving benefits under the tribal Lifeline program?
I would say almost every one of them.
Okay, so again, about 70% of the approximate 6,000 are receiving tribal Lifeline.
Correct.
Okay. What is the discount under the tribal Lifeline program?
$34.25.
So a tribal life, that's the discount that a customer receives off the bill?
Correct.
Okay. So for voice, a voice customer who's on tribal Lifeline, would they receive zero? Would they, excuse me, would they actually pay zero for their voice service?
So the federal Lifeline program requires you to provide both voice and broadband service to receive the $34.25. And if you only provide voice service, there's a different rate. I mean, all our Lifeline plans are voice and broadband, and we meet the minimum standards established by USAC for both voice and broadband.
So a tribal Lifeline, does a tribal Lifeline customer of NTUAW pay anything on a monthly bill?
They do not.
Zero. Okay. Does NTUA serve in Tohatchee today?
No,
No service in the Tohatchee area?
we do not have service today.
Okay. If the ETC designation that NTUA is seeking in this case is approved, would you anticipate that there would be additional Lifeline customers?
Potentially.
Now, would they be in the Tohatchee area?
Correct.
Because NTUA has a provisional broadband project in the Tohatchee area that's been approved, subject to designation in this case, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So I see, I think I saw it in several of your testimonies actually, that you state that NTUAW is not seeking to participate in the state Lifeline program in this case, correct?
That is correct.
And why not?
We basically get the entire $34.25 from the state, from the federal Lifeline program, and we do not receive state funding from the New Mexico state funds today, either on the Navajo Nation or off the Navajo Nation. And we have, at this point, we have no plans to do that because it's been driving the state funding demand from the state funding up, and that's an area that's contentious.
Okay. Well, I'm correct, am I not, that NTUAW in this case is seeking to participate in the state broadband program and to receive funds from the State Universal Service Fund on a project by project basis. that correct?
We are seeking state funding for broadband projects. My understanding is there's a separate amount of money set aside for it, yes.
Yeah, for example, this Tohatchi project that I referenced, if I recall correctly, the amount that were awarded for purposes of that case on a provisional basis was something in excess of $500,000. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that money's coming from the State Universal Service Fund.
Correct.
Okay. So is it NTUAW's belief that even if it is approved in this case for ETC designation to participate in the state broadband program and receive funds from the state USF, that it nevertheless is not required to participate in the state Lifeline program and provide Lifeline benefits, state Lifeline benefits to eligible customers?
Correct.
That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
You're muted, Mr. Fisk.
Sorry about that. I also dropped off for a minute there. As always, my laptop ran out of juice and I had to plug it in. It's a PRC laptop, that's fine. Okay, Joan, we're ready when you are.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, Mr. Ranaraja. I seem to have a tongue twisting problem with your name. Forgive me if I'm not pronouncing it correctly. I'd like to follow up issues that we discussed in terms of exhibits here. And you asked that the amended petition be, that is Exhibit 1, is that correct?
Correct.
Yes. And I asked you a question and I will re-ask it. Are you intending to replace your original petition, which has not been introduced as evidence, completely by this amended petition?
Could you repeat that question?
Okay, let me make it clearer here. Essentially, should the commission disregard any information in your original petition that is not included in your amended petition?
I'm not sure. That's a procedural question. I would leave it to counsel.
Okay, let me explain. Let's go a little further into when the amended petition was filed. And that was filed as an attachment to your written testimony. That was not the original one. Is that correct? Do you have a copy of that in front of you?
I have my.
I'm sorry, this is counsel.
Okay.
Oh, I was just raising my hand for an objection. I need clarification.
Muted if you're trying to say something.
I'm sorry, I had myself muted again. Okay, I'm not going to mute myself. Yes, Jeff, do you have an objection? Please go ahead.
Yes, just clarification with regard to what that refers to. I don't know if that is referring to the amended petition or if it's referring to the original petition. I mean, this proceeding is, we were conditionally approved and that was dependent upon this proceeding. So I'm not quite sure I understand what that is that Ms. Ellis is referring to.
Okay, I would be happy to clarify that. Do you have a copy of your amended petition?
Exhibit 1, correct?
Pardon?
That's Exhibit 1.
Yes,
It's Exhibit 1.
I'm asking him if he has a copy in front of him.
Yes,
Okay, and is it my correct understanding that this was attached to your direct testimony? Is that correct?
right.
And if I can refer you to the first paragraph of the amended petition,
Okay,
it said that the amended petition is submitted to support the written testimony required by the pre-hearing conference. That's the basis of my question. Are you, I noticed that you do change who the applicant is in your amended petition. Is that correct?
I think I clarified who the ultimate applicant is based on some of the conversations we've had.
Okay, but your original petition, the applicant was ComNet Wireless. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And in your amended petition, the applicant is NTUAW. Is that correct?
I don't know if it's the applicant, but that was, again, put in there to clarify who the ultimate ultimately what we were focused on, because the conversation was that ComNet was too broad, and basically we were trying to explain that this was just ComNet originally was applying on behalf of NTUA Wireless and their territory, and this was now limited to NTUA Wireless's territory.
Okay, so the answer is yes, that you basically changed the name of the applicant in this docket.
I don't know if that's necessarily true, but if the effect is probably correct, yes.
Okay, and would that be because in pre-hearing conferences, it was discussed that the broadband applicant was NTUA Wireless? Is that correct?
That was one of the reasons, correct?
Okay, and let me make clear about what NTUA Wireless is versus NTUA. NTUA Wireless is a partnership, is that correct?
Yes.
And where NTUA, which is the Navajo Tribal Authority, owns 51%, and ComNet owns 49%, but that ComNet is the operating partner for NTUA Wireless. Is that correct?
Operating and managing partner, correct.
Operating and management. So that to the extent that the ownership is not reflected in the management priorities or designation, the essence of the application has to do with the partnership is the true part, the true applicant. Is that correct?
Could you repeat that?
Yeah, I'm confusing myself. Like I said, 10 a.m. on Monday morning is not a good time. But anyway, what I'm saying is that it is the partnership that is essentially the applicant here, and that the ownership differs from the management in that partnership.
So the partnership itself is an independent entity.
Okay.
And that's the one that's actually applying here.
Okay. Okay. So in your statement in the amended petition, it says it's submitted to support the written testimony. My question has to do with whether and to what extent any information that was included and not introduced as an exhibit in this case, it would be part of the record of the original petition, or that everything in this amended petition is the final say about what your answers are or what your petition reflects.
Again, I mean, I think I would leave it to council. That sounds like more to me of a procedural question than anything else.
Is it, I hate to interrupt, but is there, can I clarify this question for Joan? It seems like Joan is asking, is the amended, Joan, tell me if this is right. Is
Yes.
asking if the amended petition replaces the original petition or if it's supplemental to that? Is that what you're asking, Joan?
Yes, thank you very much for clarifying that.
It is supplemental. It was to clarify questions that were raised in response to the original application or petition that was filed.
But you do not have the original petition actually introduced as evidence in this hearing, do you not? That's why I'm asking the question.
Yeah, I mean, that's a procedural question as far as I'm concerned. And the caption of this proceeding actually is the petition of ComNet Wireless, not NTUA Wireless.
So essentially, okay, I think the hearing examiner understood what I was asking, is that by including this amended petition as an exhibit in this case and not including the original petition, it appears that the original petition and the evidence supported there is not relevant in this hearing.
I'm going to raise an objection.
Yes, yes, I would just, first of all, I would say, Joan, was that a question or are you making an argument? And then Jeff, you know, please do respond. But Joan, I didn't understand if there's a question or an argument or what you're trying to say there.
Okay.
About it not being relevant.
Yes, I guess I just assumed that the original petition would be included as an exhibit, and I'm just trying to ask Mr. Ranaraja why it was not.
Okay, well, that wasn't the question you asked, Joan. Jeff, what did you have to say?
Yeah, I was going to object to the fact that I thought Ms. Ellis was providing some testimony there. But beyond that, it's an amendment to the original petition. I mean, it appears to me, and we can go on or off the record with this, but it appears to me that the nature of the question is trying to say that the evaluation, we have no objection to introducing or taking administrative notice of the original petition. That's why we ended up in this hearing. It was simply in a different docket that was submitted. And we are not asking to have Eugene Evans go through and evaluate an entirely new petition, which would be replicative of everything that we filed in the first one with the clarifications that we have filed with the amended petition.
I'm sorry. I think we're confusing petitions.
Yes, I think there's some confusion here because I don't mean to interrupt, Joan, but I think I know what you're getting at. Jeff, I think what Joan was referring to is that there's an amended in 2152 UT, this case, the ETC petition case, there was an original petition and an amended petition. I don't think Joan is referring to anything with regard to, 2099, which would be the application. Is that correct, Joan?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so Could I ask Joan to repeat the question then? Because I'm confused on that.
Well, I think what the issue was, we didn't have a question there, and we were asking if it was an argument and then Joan seemed to formulate a question like she wanted to ask why. And if she wants to go ahead with that question, then maybe that's the best way to proceed.
Okay, so yes, the question is, why was not the original petition in this docket not included as evidence as an exhibit?
And when you say when you say this docket, which docket are you talking about?
I'm talking about 20-00152.
And I would just say, with regard to the procedural aspect of it, there was never a separate petition in the 152 case. The 152 case was assigned to evaluate whether or not the ETC designation was required, relevant to the original petition that was submitted in case 20-00099-UT.
I would say that is incorrect. There was an original petition, was there not, filed?
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and clarify here because I'm looking at the record, and I think what we're talking about here is there on July 24th, in this case, there was filed the verified petition for ETC designation. And then there was an amended petition filed later. I see this certificate of service for it on September 24th. I guess it was an exhibit to the testimony. So I think those are the two documents that Joan is referring to, I believe. The original verified petition in this case for ETC designation and amendment, an amended petition in the same docket.
So it goes back to my original question, which the hearing examiner clarified, is the amended petition, because it's the only petition that is introduced here as evidence, completely replace the original petition that was filed in this docket?
Jeff, do you have an objection?
I'd like to, I would like to make a statement here, if I may. And I understand what Joan is saying, and I think procedurally it was simply an oversight on my part with regard to what was filed on 7/24/2020, because that was filed originally, and I think after we filed that on 7/24/2020, the original filing was without a docket number assigned to it, and then it was subsequently assigned case 20-00152-UT. And I think I understand the basis of Joan's question there. I think as far as omitting that, again, we had ComNet wireless there as opposed to the NTUA, which was subsequently clarified by the amendment that was done. But I think the initial filing and not submitting it as part of this record in this proceeding for this hearing was an omission on my part, and I'll take responsibility for that. We can either file it as an exhibit, but I don't have, it would be delayed, or we can take administrative notice of that. And my apologies for the confusion on that.
Okay, well, let's not go too much farther down this road. I think it's, we're belaboring this point a bit. The fact is the verified petition, the original petition is in the record, not the evidentiary record. It's the record as a pleading. If at this time, Jeff wants to try to get in as evidence as well, then, Joan may object on the basis that it, wasn't provided prior, but it's up to you. It's up to you if you want to get this in as evidence. Pleadings aren't always brought in as evidence. So, it's It's up to you, Jeff. How do you want to proceed?
Yeah, I mean, it's not testimony. I would move that administrative notice be taken of that verified petition. Or we can submit it as evidence. I just don't have the means right now to get it into, I mean, I have it here, but I can't like distribute copies to everybody at this point in time. It is in the record, and if people want to refer to that, that's fine with me. But that was an omission on my part as far as not including it as an exhibit along with the other exhibits.
Okay,
Staff
well,
would
I'd say
have no objection.
administrative notice would not be taken of something that's already in the record of this
Right.
case. It would be taken only when there's something in another case. So if the question, Jeff, is if you feel it needs to be admitted as evidence, you should move and we'll deal with any objections. If
Right.
not, I'd like to move
Okay.
on.
Then I will move that the filing made on 7/24/2020 as the verified petition be admitted into the record.
And
No
are you going to take an exhibit number that's not already taken?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be exhibit number, let's make that exhibit number 7.
Now, any
That would be
objection?
C-NTUA W exhibit 7.
Now, there was no direct questioning of Mr. Ranaraja on that matter. Joan, do you object? Or if you don't object, would you yourself want to ask the question of Mr. Ranaraja if he to have it admitted, or we can do that in redirect?
No, the clarification is fine. Thank you. That's what I wanted to do, was to clarify that there was a document that was in the record but was not evidence. So I will not object to it being introduced as Exhibit 7.
And that was my error, and I apologize for that, and it was just flat out omission.
Okay, so on redirect, Jeff, I'm sure you want to ask the questions of Mr. Ranaraja that you would ask generally of having it admitted. So it's provisionally admitted until you have a chance to ask those questions. All right. And then, Joan, let's proceed hopefully on another topic so we can get this moving along.
Okay, sorry about that. I wanted
No, I understand. I understand.
Okay, okay. Let me just go through some of these issues that you had addressed in your rebuttal testimony. Staff does thank you for responding in your rebuttal testimony as to some of that we thought were a lack of clarity or omissions in the previous testimony. So we appreciate that. There are some clarifications that we would like to make, however. And the first is it your understanding that the ETC designation that is requested here is solely for the limited purpose of broadband projects?
Yes.
Is that your understanding? Okay. And then in your rebuttal testimony, we're sort of not clear about what the service area is, the designated ETC state area. Am I correct in saying that you say the Navajo Nation is in New Mexico is the designated area? Is that correct?
Correct.
And you attached one map to your original testimony and then another map to your rebuttal testimony. Is that correct?
I think there were 2 maps to my rebuttal, yes.
Yes. Neither of those maps had a legend, did they?
So we created 2 maps. One was to demonstrate the boundaries of the Navajo Nation within the state of New Mexico. And the second one was was the same map with zip code boundaries overlaid on it. I thought we explained what those maps were in my testimony.
Okay, so if I could refer you to your exhibit 2 to your rebuttal testimony.
Okay.
Okay, do you have it? It's the color coded, purple, green, etc. Can you tell me what the color purple indicates on that map?
One moment.
Are we talking about NTUA Exhibit 5?
We're talking about the exhibit 2 to the rebuttal testimony, yes.
I just want to make sure that's Exhibit 5 that's been introduced into evidence.
I understand. I'm talking about the map attached to that rebuttal testimony.
And yes, Bill, that is Exhibit 5. The rebuttal testimony was admitted as Exhibit 5.
Thank you.
But I'm talking about the map that was attached to that testimony.
So the purple area is the Navajo Nation.
Okay. And what is the green area? What's the significance of the green color on your map? Since there's no legend.
I don't know.
Okay. And so am I correct in those areas that are interspersed, whether they're checkerboard areas, etc., with white and purple, that you are asking for ETC designation only for the areas that are marked in purple on this exhibit? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Can you tell me where the broadband project is located on this map?
So Tohatchee is in the area where it's the big purple area, not
in the big purple area. Okay. So I just wanted to clarify, you're saying Navajo Nation within New Mexico. And so therefore the ETC designation is only for the area designated in purple. Is
Correct.
that okay? Okay, and the broadband project is in the big purple section, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so that's limited just to broadband programs, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So that is the proposed service territory that is the subject of this application. Is that right?
Right.
Okay. Let us talk about a little bit, follow up a little bit about what Mr. Templeman was asking you in terms of the various discounts that you get. And you said that you thought there were, what, 6,000 customers or so in that area that were, was that issue here?
It was a guess, yes.
Okay. And so let me refer you to your rebuttal testimony, the text of your rebuttal testimony. Okay. So on page 5 of your rebuttal testimony.
Okay.
On lines 9 through 12.
Okay.
You talk about the underserved area, etc. And is it my correct understanding that in spite of what the definition is in the actual rules of the SRUSF, it is ComNet's understanding that underserved area has to do with speeds, is that correct, versus unserved?
Under the New Mexico State Broadband Program rules, yes, that's correct.
Okay, so there's no indication there about the rapidity of within 10 business days or whatever that is part of the current rule, provision of service.
It's not in the definition, that's correct.
Okay. Then let's continue on this, whether or not the part of the rule that asks about the impact on the SRUSF fund, and that can be found on the question and answers on page 7 of your rebuttal. Is that correct? And I'm confused there. Mr. Kelly in his testimony said, yes, it does impact the SRUSF fund because the broadband program is, okay, I guess Jeff wants an objection here.
Yes, I was just going to object to the fact that Mr. Kelly's testimony has not been admitted into the record yet.
Objection sustained.
Okay, have you read Mr. Kelly's testimony?
Yes.
Is it not correct on page 7, lines 3 to 6, that you basically disagree with Mr. Kelly's assessment in your rebuttal testimony?
Objection.
It's in the testimony, whether it's been admitted or not. This is a question and answer of Mr. Rahanaja's rebuttal testimony.
I'd like to have the opportunity to state my objection first.
Yes, please, Jeff. Yes, go ahead.
My objection is that it's the statement was made that we disagree with Mr. Kelly's testimony, and that's a rather broad statement. If it can be narrowed, great, but as asked, it just asked as to whether or not we disagree with Mr. Kelly's testimony. And we don't disagree with all of Mr. Kelly's testimony. So I'd like some specificity, please.
Okay, sustained. Joan, I would just say, if you can just ask Mr. Ranaraja specifically about if he has an understanding that of what particular conflict or contradiction that you see, that you believe is in there. Just if you can narrow that, make it very clear to Mr. Ranaraja what you're asking and narrow it to the particular issue.
Okay.
What you see as possibly the contradiction.
Okay, let me refer you then to the question on page 6 of your rebuttal testimony. Could you read that out loud, please?
Yes, it says on page 15 of the direct testimony of staff witness Timothy Kelly, Mr. Kelly states, staff disagrees with NTUA Wireless that its ETC designation does not impact the size of the state Universal Service Fund.
I'm sorry, does not impact the size of the state Universal Service Fund?
Correct.
Thank you.
And it says, Mr. Kelly states that the size of the broadband program is not a fixed amount and that the program can vary as long as $5 million is awarded from the program, and the total amount of the SURF does not exceed $30 million. Do you agree?
Okay. And you answer no. Is that correct on page 7?
Correct.
So is your answer no to whether the designation does not impact the size of the State Universal Service Fund, or is it no that how the broadband fund size is assessed? I'm not clear, and that's why I wanted a clarification as to how you can say, and what is the basis of your statement that it doesn't impact the fund when in fact the broadband projects are funded out of the State Rural Universal Service Fund?
Sure. So I disagree with the first part of it, where it says NTUA wireless, designating NTUA wireless does not impact the size of the fund, right? I mean, he disagrees with that statement, but in fact, just because NTUA wireless's application is granted, where NTUA is seeking only broadband funding,
Right.
if it's granted, it does not impact the size of the fund.
Okay, so basically the $500,000 for your broadband project that is funded out of the SRUSF fund, do you consider that not an impact?
Not the size of the fund, right?
So you're
question is the
you're
size.
you're basically focusing on the size of the fund, literally, rather than does it impact the fund?
Correct. And that was what I was trying to say in my testimony.
Okay. And because your second question and answer on lines 14 on page 7 basically indicates that you do say that it does theoretically impact the SRUSF, the fund itself. You say, basically, let me go back and try to explain this in such a way as to what I understand is your distinction. You are being conditionally funded, or the company is, for a $500,000 project. Is that correct? Out of the SRUSF fund. Is that right?
That's correct.
And so your question and answer, which on lines 14 through 21 and on to the next page, basically is an abstract answer, is it not? Saying that it might not necessarily do it if it didn't get a project. Is that right?
No, so let me clarify what I was trying to say.
Okay.
What I was trying to say was that the total size of the fund is set, and how each of the programs that are funded through the state USF is based on demand and supply, basically, right? But if in this instance, NTUA Wireless is only asking for authority to request funding from the broadband fund, granting NTUAW's application will not have any impact on how much of that money is set aside for broadband. Number one. Number two is that once it's set aside, it'll increase the competition or the demand for that fund, but it doesn't increase or decrease what has been set aside. So it doesn't impact the amount of funding that's made available, but it will increase the competition for the funds. That's a true statement, but it does not impact the amount of funding that's set aside. That's the point I was trying to make.
So you essentially are interpreting the rule in the SRUSF rules focusing on the amount of the fund rather than whether it impacts the State Rural Universal Service Fund. Is that correct?
Okay, I guess in a literal sense, when you say impact, sure. I mean,
Yeah, that's why I'm trying to do is to reconcile your two questions and answers. And that's what I gather from your answer.
what I was talking about was the size, right? I mean, ultimately, it will not impact. The point I was trying to make was it will not impact what people who contribute into the fund. It's not going to grow the fund. That's the point I was trying to make.
Okay, so in a sense, your language challenging Mr. Kelly's interpretation of the fund was just a difference of opinion on how the size of the fund grows. Is that correct? I just don't. Yes, you made a point to criticize Mr. Kelly's understanding of the fund in that answer. Did you not? The first answer?
No, that was not my intent at all. I was just trying
Okay.
to, yeah.
Okay, that was just what I wanted to clarify. Just a moment, I need to go through. I think I have no further questions on on the cross-examination.
All right, Joan, thank you. So I have no questions of Mr. Ranarajan myself. So we'll go to redirect by Mr. Albright.
Oh, yes, I just have a few questions. Mr. Ranarajan here. You were asked questions concerning the service area and the designation of those areas that might be eligible. Do you remember those questions from Ms. Ellis?
Yes.
They might be eligible for projects. And each one of those, in your testimony, I believe you stated, each one of those would be subject to a separate petition by NTUAW, ComNet NTUAW, in any future proceeding, correct?
That's correct. I mean, like I said in my testimony, all it does, granting ComNet's application in this instance, all it does is allows NTUAW to apply for broadband grants within that defined area, which is the Navajo Nation in the state of New Mexico.
And so those would be subject to competition from other applicants, perhaps, that have coverage there, or perhaps whether they be wireless, whether they be wireline, they would be subject to competition with those other projects and would be subject to review by the commission staff for the technical and financial competency, correct?
That's correct. I mean, not only would it be subject to competition within others who want to provide service in that area, but you'll be competing with the entire state as well.
And then you were asked questions as well about the size of the fund and the semantics or the difference in language, let me just say that way, with regard to the size of the fund and so forth. Isn't it true that there, with regard to the impact overall on the SRUSF, it depends upon how many applications are actually filed as to whether or not all of the money that's set aside for broadband is actually used?
That's correct.
And so there are companies that could be ETC designated that don't apply, correct? So merely being ETC designated does not impact the size of the fund, correct?
That's correct.
And it doesn't impact the draw. Rather than shaking your head, yes, if you can give a verbal for the court reporter.
That's correct. Yeah.
And isn't it also true that with regard to the ETC designation, there are many ETCs who are designated that haven't applied for broadband funding, correct?
That's correct.
And it could be that even with the ETC designation, NTUAWC or ComNet Wireless NTUAW might not apply for a broadband project,
Potentially, yes.
in which case there'd be no impact on either the size of the fund or on the broadband program itself. So it really is project by project, correct?
Right.
I have no further questions on redirect.
Well, Jeff, I just want to remind you that you might want to ask those foundational questions for that exhibit, the verified petition.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And I do want to ask one recross, if I may, based on
Let's
the.
go ahead with Jeff first.
Yes, Mr. Ranaraja, we also are including as, or have moved the verified petition of ComNet Wireless LLC as an ETC that was filed on 7/24/2020 into the record. That was the initial petition. Do you recall having provided a verified petition in support of that application?
I do.
And that application was for the specific project that became the initial for the Tahachi project, correct? Let me restate this. Let me restate that. That wasn't asked very well. That verified petition of ComNet Wireless LLC was for the Tahachi project, correct?
It was associated with the Tohachi application, but the ETC based request was for the Navajo Nation as well.
And that petition was prepared under your supervision, direction, and control, correct?
It was.
Time with some assistance from local council.
Yes.
Okay. And the purpose there was to provide some clarity with regard to what was initially submitted as ComNet Wireless LLC, correct?
Yes.
And there's, and that petition was, is it correct that that petition was the petition that was reviewed by staff?
Correct.
And there's been no subsequent changes to that petition other than the amendment that was made to clarify the entities and your, as reflected in your various testimonies, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, at this time, I'm going to again move for the submission of what we will label as C-NTUAW Exhibit 7 into the record.
No objection.
Nope. Any objections?
No.
Okay.
All right, it is admitted.
Okay, and I have no further questions on redirect.
All right. Now, ordinarily, we wouldn't have recross. Joan says she has one question. Jeff, do you object to having Joan ask an additional question?
I have no objection.
Okay. Joan, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that in this instance, for this broadband project, et cetera, that is a wireless, it's a submission of a wireless or fixed wireless project. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay.
All right. Bill, did you have any other questions?
No, thank you.
All right. So, Mr. Ranaraja, you are excused provisionally. There may be, after Mr. Kelly's asked questions, there may be questions, maybe additional questions that arise for you. But at this point, you can sit back and rest easy for a while.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mr. Fisk, this is the reporter. Can we take a break for a few minutes?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay. So, is 5 minutes enough?
Yes, sir.
We do more than that if you want.
5 minutes is fine.
Okay, so I won't go by the computer time. Let me look at my phone because my computer doesn't have the right time. Okay, 11:37, 11:38, so 11:43, and I'm just gonna stay on but muted anyway.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Albright,
Yes,
this is David Lee, the court reporter. I'm not familiar with some of these terms. When I'm preparing the transcript, I may send you an email asking you what's what, unless I can figure it out or I hear it again later.
sure, that's fine.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
do you have my email address?
I believe I do.
Should be ja@jalblaw.com.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
All right, it is 11:43 according to my phone. I don't know if Joan, are you back? You're muted. We can give some more time. I'm not in a rush. Let's see who's here. I don't see Bill either. Okay. Well, there's Bill. There's Bill. I see him. I see him. He just changed places. Everybody got rearranged.
Okay, I'm unmuted and et cetera. So,
So we can go back on the record?
yes,
Yes, okay. Mr. Lee, let's go back on the record.
Go ahead.
thank you. Staff would like to call Mr. Tim Kelly to the stand.
Where is
Mr.
the
Kelly, would you
stand?
raise your right hand, please? You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in the matter of opinion should be the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes,
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. This is your first opportunity to testify at a hearing. Is that not correct?
that's correct.
And for the commission's information and for the hearing examiners, would you please kind of explain what your background is, your education, et cetera?
I'm a utility economist at.
I'm sorry, Mr. Kelly, your voice is very muffled.
Yeah, Tim, it's very muffled and your connection might not be that good either. So please try to speak up, speak clearly, very loud and loudly.
Sure. Is this any better?
Yes.
So I'm a staff economist with the PRC. My academic background is in economics. I have a bachelor's from St. Lawrence University in economics and mathematics. And then I have a master's from Colorado State University in agricultural and resource economics.
Thank you. And did you cause to be filed on November 20th, 2020, your direct testimony?
I did.
And was this prepared by you or under your supervision?
It was.
And do you have any minor changes, grammatical changes to your testimony that you have submitted last evening in legislative format?
Yeah, I do have some changes to my testimony.
Okay, and Mr. Hearing Examiner, I think they were all fairly self-explanatory. They were not major. They were just grammatical or clarification in terms of certain exhibits. So if we could not go through that, if Mr. Albright would agree that we don't have, and Mr. Templeman, that we don't have to go through individually each of those changes.
Before we ask them, can I just clarify? So that the staff exhibit 1, that has the changes on it.
Yes, it does.
Okay, and then so yeah, I'd ask Jeff and Bill if they have any objections to just or if you would like to ask specific questions about the changes.
Does staff exhibit 1, I'm trying to look at it here briefly, but does it identify the changes?
Yes, it does. It's in legislative format.
Okay. Well, I don't have any objection to that process. I did not study for those changes, but it's my problem. So I have no objection.
Mr. Hearing Examiner, this is Mr. Albright. Think we have clarification there. The line throughs that you have there, those reflect all the changes, Ms. Ellis?
Yes, and the underlined is the new language, and the line throughs are the ones that we eliminated.
Okay, Mr. Hearing Examiner, I've gone through those. I don't see anything of substance that requires. So I have no objection.
All right. Joan, are you moving for admission now?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So are there no objections?
No objection.
No objection.
Okay. So that is admitted as, is this, we just call it staff exhibit 1?
Yes.
Okay.
I think it's
All
so marked. The other, let's see, Mr. Kelly, based on your reading of the rebuttal testimony and some of the questions and answers in the discussion this morning, do you have any changes to your recommendation based on those previous items?
Yes, I do have a change to my recommendation. I think after reading the rebuttal and hearing what was clarified this morning, I'm no longer on the fence about.
Sorry, sir. I'm sorry, sir. You will need to speak more clearly.
Sure. Any better? Is it fairly?
Go ahead.
So I do change my recommendation. I believe that NTUA Wireless, through its rebuttal and what was answered this morning, that I would recommend approval for its limited ETC designation.
I'm sorry, I would recommend
Approval.
approval. And
Yeah, for its limited ETC designation.
thank you.
So, Mr. Kelly, would you like to expand on that, or is that, is it sufficient just to say that some of the things that were provided to you in rebuttal, some of the evidence and some of the evidence that you heard this morning in response to answers to interrogatories, that, do you want to go into any detail about that or not?
In my testimony, no, I identified areas that I believed were deficient. I think in the rebuttal, they targeted those areas and provided information for me to at least say that they had addressed it. And so I think it given this expedited procedure and its limited designation, I do think that they have checked all the boxes for me to say that I recommend an approval.
Okay. So his testimony has been admitted, and so I would pass the witness for cross.
All right, Jeff.
Okay, and just a couple of questions, one of which was asked by Ms. Ellis with regard to the changes, and specifically, first of all, Mr. Kelly, my name's Jeff Albright. I'm local counsel for ComNet Wireless and NTUA Wireless here in New Mexico. and want to welcome you to both the commission and to your first hearing. Would you, just a couple of general questions. Do you believe the competition is important when it comes to providing broadband service in the unserved and underserved areas?
Mr. Hearing Examiner, I would object to that question as being irrelevant to his testimony.
I'm gonna let the question go forward. I think competition is obviously an issue generally under Lifeline. So Jeff, please go ahead. Objection overruled.
Sorry, Mr. Albrecht, could you repeat the question?
Yes, and this goes to the issue that you raised with regard to the impact on the fund, whether it's the broadband fund or something else. Do you believe the competition is important with regard to the provision of broadband service in unserved or underserved areas?
I'm sorry to interrupt. I misspoke and I said something about Lifeline. I apologize for that. But I will still overrule the objection because I do think generally the issue of competition is important for this purpose as well. So objection overruled, but I strike my remark about Lifeline. This, of course, does not have anything to do with Lifeline at this point. I'm sorry, go ahead. Please go ahead.
So I do believe competition is important, but with how the broadband funds are selected, it doesn't necessarily, it's the commission's decision is my understanding. It doesn't necessarily have to be a competitive process. So I'm not entirely sure if that answers your question. I think generally I would say competition is important. I'm not sure if our current process is as competitive is particularly competitive.
Okay, and I'm somewhat just laying the groundwork. You do understand from NTUAW's petition here, ComNet NTUAW petition, that the ETC designation still is going to require them to submit project by project applications for any future broadband money, correct?
Yeah, I understand that.
Okay, and that will compete. Isn't it a true statement that will compete with other broadband projects as well with regard to in the event that funds are limited, broadband funds are limited, subject to the number of applications and projects and things? In other words, if the broadband fund is exceeded, the commissioners, not necessarily staff, but the commissioners will set some kind of priority that will determine which projects get funded and which projects don't.
Yeah, if it exceeds the limit, then yeah, it's up to the commissioners to decide which projects get funded. I think there is some play in the size of the broadband fund. And so in some years, I guess that broadband fund might not be limiting every year. There may be some years where they're able to increase it enough to award all projects where they no longer, and then wouldn't have to have any criteria to determine which ones not to award.
Okay, and related to that, there are many ETCs, wireline or wireless, that don't apply for broadband projects, correct?
That's correct. It's on them to apply. And
so again, it will be a year to year. Is it your understanding that for ComNet Wireless and for NTUAW, it would be on a year-to-year basis? Some years they might apply for a project, and other years they might not apply for a project.
Yeah, it would be up to NTUAW to make that decision whether they applied or didn't apply each year.
Mr. Hearing Examiner, I have no further questions for Mr. Kelly at this point. So I
Okay.
have no further cross-examination.
All right, Bill, any questions?
Yes. Mr. Kelly, I'm going to ask you a question about page 7 of your testimony. If you could take a look at that. You have it?
I do.
Okay. On lines 7 through 11, you talk about Lifeline service being offered by NTUAW. But you finish off that answer by saying it is uncertain if a second phase focused on Lifeline service is necessary. What did you mean by that?
So with that statement, with a lot of these other ETC designations that we've been doing recently, as a result of the broadband project submitted, there has been a second phase focused on the company requesting Lifeline service. NTUAW is in a unique situation, being that they do offer federal Lifeline service, but they were designated by the FCC rather than the commission. So the point, I guess, with that line was just to confirm that there was no need to explore Lifeline service any further related to NTUAW. Just trying to get some more information on that.
Okay. So that you would agree that under the New Mexico State Universal Service Fund rule that for designation as a ETC, an applicant has to provide and offer federal Lifeline service, right?
For federal Lifeline, yes.
Federal Lifeline. Okay, so are you, you specified that. Does that mean you don't find anything in the State Universal Service Fund rule with regard to the state Lifeline program?
You know, I'm not as familiar with the rules related to the state LITAP program.
Are you familiar with the commission's rule at all on the state Lifeline program?
I know what LITAP is, but I have limited experience reviewing any applications related to LITAP. So no would be my answer to your question.
Okay. Well, I want to ask you a question about the commission's Lifeline rule. Do you happen to have a copy of it available?
Not in front of me.
Okay. Well, I'm going to refer you then, the Lifeline and Link Up benefits rule that's been in place for the commission for many years is part of the administrative code. It's 17.11.11 in the New Mexico Administrative Code. I'm going to ask you about two different sections. I'll just read them to you. 17.11.11.7C is a definition. It is the definition of eligible telecommunications carrier, or ETC. And an ETC, for purposes of this rule, it is described here in the rule as meaning a carrier that has been designated by the commission as eligible to receive disbursements from the State Rural Universal Service Fund or the Federal Universal Service Fund. So that's one section I want you to remember. And then I want to read also to you from section 17.11.11.10A. And this section describes the benefits for Lifeline and Link Up under the state Lifeline program.
Mr. Hearing Examiner, yeah. Either now or later, staff would like to object to both of these lines of questioning.
Well, go ahead with your objection now so we can hear it.
Okay, I would say the objection is based on two concerns. Number one, Mr. Kelly did not address at all the LITAP rule, except to the extent that he said in his testimony that he confirmed that that did not necessitate a second phase. Then when Mr. Templeman asked him whether he was familiar with the separate LITAP rule, Mr. Kelly clearly said he was not. He didn't have a copy, etc. And so therefore, I object to Mr. Templeman trying to extract a hypothetical or a statement from Mr. Kelly that would indicate anything about the LITAP program, which was neither addressed in his testimony, and he testified here that he was not familiar with it.
Bill, how do you respond?
Well, first of all, Mr. Kelly speaks broadly about the rules that are in place and the requirements that are necessary for ETC designation by NTUAW in this case. Specifically, I asked him about the provision in section on page 7 of his testimony, where he raises the question about whether a second phase was necessary or not. So I think this is clearly within the scope of his testimony. With regard to the comment by Ms. Ellis that he doesn't have a copy in front of him, I didn't expect to have to say this, but I called Ms. Ellis this morning to alert her that I would be asking Mr. Kelly about this issue, and so that she could provide Mr. Kelly with a copy so that he would have a copy of it to look at while I asked the question. She obviously chose not to do that. She cannot object to me that I didn't make a copy available. I believe this is an area strictly, clearly within the scope of Mr. Kelly's testimony. I'm not going to go into great depth, but Mr. Kelly is the only witness that staff has offered in this case. And I think I should be given the opportunity to ask him about this.
All right, objections are overruled. I do think we could go forward with this. This is going to be limited questioning. In terms of looking, being able to access it, Tim, if you're at your computer, everyone can access. I just accessed it through the New Mexico Administrative Code. I just NMAC. If you go NM Administrative Code, you can go right to it. Published by the Records Center. I know that Bill has he quoted 1711-11-7, and that was pretty short. If there are, even if you can't reach it, if they're just short quotes that Bill can give, I can, verify that those are so far that was the correct quote. And if you feel you're able to answer the question and understand what he's saying, even without seeing the rule, fine. If not, the rule is available. Like I said, if you type in NM, Administrative Code.
Let me also, Mr. Hearing Examiner, I would like to respond to Mr. Templeman's insinuation that we weren't prepared. Actually, I talked to Mr. Kelly afterwards, and we both decided that he neither had the information, was not familiar with it, and it would be irrelevant to his testimony. And so therefore, I did not provide him for a copy. And I really take umbrage at Mr. Templeman's insinuation that we didn't follow up. We didn't follow up because it wasn't part of his testimony in the first place and is not part of this case. So I know you overruled my objection, but I would like to restate it.
Okay, well, the objections are overruled. I do think there's limited questioning can be relevant, and I think that we should be able to look at the code. Tim, are you able to get the New Mexico Administrative Code before you on your computer?
Yeah, it's correct. It's 171111.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And then Bill just quoted from 1711-11-7, and I'll let Bill go on.
Okay, now I'm going to refer to 17.11.11.10A. And I'll read the first sentence, the only one I'm going to reference. Under benefit, it describes benefits, and it states lifeline benefits provided by ETCs shall consist of basic service or its functional equivalent and usage charges less a discount of not less than $3.50 and any other lifeline benefits established by the Federal Communications Commission. Well, Mr. Kelly, did you find that online? Or do you have access to the rule at this moment?
Yes, I'm looking at it.
Okay. So my real question is whether staff has a position in this case on the question of whether the lifeline rule that I just read from you requires a state ATC receiving disbursements from the state USF in the form of broadband program project grants to offer state lifeline program discounts in addition to the federal lifeline program discount.
Mr. Hearing Examiner, I would
I object to an objection at this time and coaching the witness. The witness should be given an opportunity to answer.
okay, I would
Joan, I
object.
think this is a proper question.
Okay, but I haven't said what my objection is.
Go ahead. Yes, please avoid coaching the witness.
I am not coaching the witness. What I am essentially saying that I object to it in the sense that it calls either for a legal conclusion or a policy conclusion, neither of which my witness is able to render at this time.
Bill, you don't have to say, I overruled the objection. As Bill said, Mr. Kelly is being presented as staff's witness in this matter with staff's position in this matter. So I think it's a proper question and it can go forward. Did you need the question repeated, Tim?
Yeah, if you could just repeat the question.
Okay, yeah, let me try to state it again. Does staff have a position in this case on the question of whether the lifeline rule that I just read to you from requires a state ETC receiving disbursements from the state USF to offer state lifeline program discounts in addition to those being provided by the federal lifeline program?
And my position is that it doesn't, that you do not have to provide state or request LITAP in addition to the lifeline. They're what they're receiving in lifeline.
Okay, so my understanding that it's staff's position that it's optional for a state ETC, whether it wishes to provide state lifeline benefits or not?
I think answering that question, there's a lot of things to consider. What I've heard this morning related to NTUAW, there would be no additional benefit for that LITAP program. So I think even though it might reduce, there's a lot of things going on when we look at LITAP, even though you might be reducing the bills for their customers, there are other, because it's getting paid out of the fund, other people contributing to the fund are paying that $350. So I think, it's something that would be hard to give you a conclusion without looking at data, affordability, and knowing a lot more about the company's situation and its specific customers to tell you, would it be beneficial for this company to apply for LITAP?
Okay, is there anything in the language of the rule that I read, the Lifeline rule that I read to you that leads you to a conclusion that it's optional for an ETC and whether they provide state Lifeline benefits or not?
I'm going off what I've seen in other ETC cases, that what has gone through is that because LITAP, in requesting LITAP, you often have to provide some additional service that it wasn't required. And if a company says they're not going to provide it and it doesn't make sense for them to provide it, then it wasn't something worth pursuing.
Well, the reason why I'm raising these questions, Mr. Kelly, is because it seems to me that if there's a qualified low-income person in the state that would benefit by receiving state Lifeline benefits, it is worth something to consider. And I understand it has to be done on a case-by-case basis, and you've looked at it from NTUAW's perspective, and I honor that because I heard the same answers to questions this morning that you did. So I respect your response on that point, that in this instance, state Lifeline benefits would not provide those tribal Lifeline customers with it. You can't get lower than zero, all right? So an additional $350 would not make a difference. But I am trying to
leading
pin
to a
down.
question because there's a lot of some testimony going on here. Is this
Yeah,
is this
exactly.
leading to a question, Bill? Because
Exactly.
is this part of a question for Mr. Kelly?
I guess what I'm asking is this, whether ultimately the staff has a position and whether it is optional for an applicant as to whether they ask to be able to provide state Lifeline service or not.
I guess I would object again because asked and answered that he says that the staff does not have a position, that he is graciously.
I'm going to object again. This is a speaking objection.
No, but what I am saying is that to try to elicit a staff position in this case on a LITAP rule is inappropriate, outside the scope of this case, and he can answer it, but I do not want it to be considered staff's position. So I object on all the reasons that I stated previously.
Okay, objection overruled. And if hopefully Bill, is this the last question on this this topic? It sort of does seem like it's hard for me to see how it's different from the question that was asked. But if maybe we could get a concise answer and then move on, possibly away from this line of questioning. Is that possible, Bill?
It is possible.
Okay.
It's probable.
Okay, so Tim, do you need that repeated?
Yeah, if you could repeat the question after the recent dialogue.
Is it staff's position in this case that it is optional for an ETC seeking state designation status for participation in the broadband fund, whether they offer state Lifeline benefits or not?
In this case, I do believe it is optional. I think to make a more general statement, there's a lot more information that needs to be analyzed as far as, looking at the company, whether they can actually provide additional benefits. And in the end, it's a really, I think your question goes back to being an equity question as far as how much is an extra 350 worth to low income? Is without it, is the service unaffordable? If not, then, you know, then there's a lot up in the air still to consider before I could say that they should apply for LITAP. In this case, it doesn't make sense for them to apply for LITAP.
Hasn't the commission already made that assessment by its rule where it states that an ETC shall provide the $3.50 discount?
Objection again, calls for a legal conclusion.
I'm
I
going
don't
to
have-
sustain that objection. I would say the rule does speak for itself here. And
I don't have any further questions.
okay, thank you. All right, so let's see. I don't have any questions for Mr. Kelly. I think I would be next, and then reader. I believe
Yes, I have. a
redirect by
couple-
Joan. I'll read that. Redirect. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kelly, in questioning by Mr. Albright, he consistently uses the term competition in terms of the broadband projects. Do you feel that competition is a factor at all in the commission's designation as to which broadband projects are funded?
I'm not too familiar with the exact criteria that commissioners use to choose projects. Like I said before, so it doesn't, because that criteria is up to them, competition, I think the competition isn't as prevalent as if you would have had something like an auction to serve each area.
Okay, so your answer is no, maybe not significant, or what is your answer to that question? What, in terms of, do you know for sure whether competition is a factor in the commission's decision?
No, I don't know if competition is a factor. Because the broadband limit was adjusted in this year compared to previous years, I would, and it's not necessarily a fixed amount, I don't think competition is necessarily as prevalent as some might assume.
Okay, that's all I have.
All right. So does anyone else have any further questions for Tim Kelly? No? No? Okay.
Can
Okay.
somebody
Well,
spell LITAP?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Can somebody spell LITAP?
Oh, it's an acronym. It's capital L, capital I, capital T, capital A, capital P.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. All right. So with that, well, the evidence is in. And I will say, as I've said in some of these others, I'm satisfied that, I'll be issuing an RD that would approve the designation. I'm telling you that because we might want to I'd like to get this on the December 16th open meeting schedule. That's the last one for this year. I wonder if exceptions would be waived, subject to, if I say something crazy in the RD but as you know, I usually don't. How did the council feel about that?
I think that was our intent with Mr. Kelly's ultimate testimony, that we would not have exceptions and we would agree that they should be designated as an ETC for a limited fashion, in a limited fashion to a limited area.
Jeff, I assume would have no exceptions to that.
Mr. Hearing Examiner, we have no exceptions. Don't anticipate any exceptions to
Right.
the.
Obviously, if someone has an issue with
agree.
the language I've used, you can see that from the other RDs I've done in these cases. I keep them very short because it's easier to do, but also because there's less to object to, and I try to keep it unobjectionable. But of course, I understand there may be, possibly issues with
Don't
language.
anticipate anything. We would certainly endorse getting it on the December 16th calendar if we can, since that's the last one prior to the end of the year.
Bill?
I have no objection to that process.
Okay. All right. So I will, hope, I do have other things for the agenda December 16th, but hopefully I'll get the RD out by the end of this week or possibly Monday. So yeah, it will be brief. I'm very brief in my RDs. So, gee, I guess there isn't really anything else to take care of. So we can, no one else has anything to say. I didn't think that no one, we're done, I guess. Yeah, that's it. I just want to make sure we're done. Yes. So the hearing is now closed. Thank you.
The only other comment I would like to make is
Yes, sir.
not necessarily on the record, but I want to thank Mr. Kelly for his testimony. I want to thank interveners and also our court reporter, Mr. Lee here, since these are a little bit abnormal times from the way we normally do business, but appreciate everybody's effort on it.
I do as well. And I appreciate the fact that we've been able to get so many of these done, before the end of the year, as we had hoped, when we had a lot of other work to do. And I appreciate that on everybody's count, not just us and staff, but I know Bill and Jeff, you guys have had a lot of work going on as well. And we've gotten a lot done, and I think it's great. So anyhow, with that, I will close the hearing. Thank you to the court reporter.
Thank you.
For appearing.
Thank you so much.